Proteins are the tools of the body. If you can do something, it's probably because of a protein. Proteins, just like carbohydrates and lipids, are made of monomers. So you're going to notice some patterns here. First, what are these organic molecules made of? Carbons, hydrogens, what? What's the monomer that they're made of? Then you're going to notice we talk about the types, like what are the different kinds? So for lipids, it's saturated, unsaturated fats. It's that there's steroids and that there's phospholipids. With carbohydrates, it's that there's simple, complex carbohydrates. With proteins, it's that there's different types of amino acids. So then we're going to look at health, and that's kind of how we wrap up each of these different organic molecules. So in this case, the amino acids are the monomer, because amino acids make a smaller peptide chain, which then is assembled into a protein. When you look at some of the similarities and differences between carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins, you'll notice that they are all carbon-based. You know, they all have carbon, they all have hydrogen, they all have oxygen, but protein is going to be a little different. It'll have some other atoms. You'll notice that they're all made of chains, but carbohydrates are chains of glucose, whereas lipids are fatty acids. Proteins are amino acids. You'll notice that they all form these polymers, where there's like this long chain of the individual monomer units between the two. Proteins are made of more than just carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. You'll notice here that we have some S for sulfur, and we have N for nitrogen. So proteins are long amino acid chains. Here's just a generic amino acid. We've got the amino group, we've got the hydrogen, we've got the carboxyl. That's the same for every amino acid. The thing that's different is this R group, sometimes called a variant, but it's the R group. So here's our generic amino acid. We've got the amino, we've got the H, we've got the carboxyl, but then we've got this side chain. So if it's glycine, that side chain is a little bit of an H there. If it's aspartic acid, it's a little more complex. If it's phenylalanine, we've got a ring structure for that R group. Two major types of amino acids, essential and non-essential. Essential, we have to eat those. Non-essential, our body makes those. Anytime you eat meat, you're going to get those essential amino acids. If you're a vegetarian, it's going to be a little bit more work to find those essential amino acids in foods that you can eat. Whenever amino acids join together, a water is lost. So that's dehydration synthesis, just like when we add the fatty acid chains to the glycerol, just like when we add glucose units together. There's water loss, dehydration synthesis. Whenever those molecules are split by water, that's called hydrolysis. Hydro for water, lysis to split. So here's our amino acid chain. Dehydration synthesis, we lose the water. Hydrolysis, we add the water and it splits it apart. The bond between amino acids is called a peptide bond. Proteins can form different levels of structure because they're like tools, so they can be more or less complicated. So primary structure just means all the amino acids are in a row, but secondary structure means it's going to make some bends. Tertiary means it's twisted into a 3D kind of shape, and quaternary means that we have more than one chain of proteins involved. So level 1, 2, 3, 4. If we change the shape of the protein, just like if we were to melt a tool, it would lose its function. That's called denaturing. We can denature proteins with heat, pH, salt, or something mechanical. We do this all the time when we're cooking. Like we cook an egg, that egg white, albumin, is a protein. When we cook it, that protein changes shape, and so it changes color, and that's how we know that it's fully cooked. So here's our protein. We can denature it with heat or acid or salt or some other mechanical means. We use proteins for energy, although they're not a great source of energy. 4 calories per gram. The problem isn't that they don't provide energy. The problem is that we can use them for so many other things. We also use proteins as enzymes. Enzymes help chemical reactions. Some hormones are proteins. Some hormones are fats, but there's hormones that are proteins, and we use proteins for structure. So if we look at this label, there's 4 grams of protein times 4 calories per gram. That's 16 calories of protein. Here in our cell membrane, we have some proteins that form receptors and gates and channels. So those are going to be important to the cell membrane function. So here's our cell membrane again. We have proteins, we have carbohydrate chains, we have lipids. So all the organic molecules have a role to play in our cell membranes. Some protein foods are better than others. Like many foods offer protein, but few foods are high protein, low fat foods, and those are called lean proteins. Lean proteins are your best source of protein, but without the added saturated fats, because remember, saturated fats are bad for you. So that's a little overview of proteins and how they work.